one told you life was gonna be this way. The job's a joke you broke, your love life's the old way. It's like you're always stuck in second gear. When it hasn't been your day, or maybe your month, or even your year. But I'll be there for you. When the road starts to fall, I'll be there for you. Like I've been there before. I'll be there for you. 'Cause I'm there for you too.
Welcome, everybody, to our evening chat with four very special people and my co-host, Denise Croden. I want to welcome all of you. I'm Ronnie Blumenthal. I'm the CEO of the foundation, and I'm going to first introduce my co-host, Denise Croden. And some of you may already know Denise from the 2018 conference, or if you've worked on our virtual conference this year. She's currently the vice chair of our board and will be on the slate as the rising chair for January 2023. She is the aunt of Jonathan Winrow, who you may know through Dana and Chris, who are both very active in the foundation. She also has a lovely niece named Tori, so we want to give her a shout out too. So welcome, Denise, and thanks for co-hosting with me. And just to kind of give you the lay of the land tonight, we're going to start out. Denise is going to pick up from me because we have sent special gifts to each of our founders. For those of you who don't know, we are celebrating what I call our second 20th anniversary. The first anniversary celebration we had was at the 2018 conference, and that was to celebrate 20 years since the first family meeting, which was in 1998. But the official incorporation of the foundation did not happen until 2002. So that is our 20-year celebration this year as an official 501c3. And all of that, the family meeting up through that incorporation, all happened thanks to the four people that you see on your screen. So Denise, maybe you would like to start and let everybody open their gifts and tell them a little bit about the background, and then we'll start with our panel.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Ronnie, and welcome everybody. So there's no racing about opening the gifts, okay? But please start. And just a few words, that we wanted to share is that ultimately, if I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulder of giants, and that's Sir Isaac Newton. And we consider you guys giants in our community. So we want to celebrate the 20th anniversary. We want you guys to accept this gift as a gesture of gratitude for so selflessly sharing your time, your energy, your heart, and your talent to create PMSF for your continued support every day. We stand on your shoulders as we build the future. Now, this little gift, which you guys will obviously have to show and put on the screen so everybody can see it, is something that we wanted to commemorate the 20th anniversary with. It is made in the beloved town of Boston, Massachusetts. We had a jeweler who worked on it and designed it. And I'm waiting to see who's been able to open it yet. Oh, there we go.
Awesome. Here we go.
So Nick's showing it. Nick, just hold it back just a little bit more. There we go. You can kind of see it. Obviously, has our logo, and it has the name around it on the back. It does have the 20 years. So thanks. That's great, Curtis. Perfect.
I think it shows a little better on the black background if I can. It's just kind of a Halloween type thing because people are fading in and out like we're spirits or something.
Well, we're just trying to, have a good coffee, hang out in New York City. It looks like Sue and Kathy are in a cab on their way here to meet us, but hey, we'll wait for it. Don't you worry about it.
Good narrative.
I think everybody's used to those two going rogue.
We don't want any stories about cabs.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Denise, thank you. Ronnie,
thank you very much.
Wear them well, and thank you.
I will wear it with pride.
Very nice.
Anniversaries.
Thank you.
Very nice.
All right. So we are going to start the evening with Dr. Curtis Rogers. And Curtis is a senior clinical geneticist at the Greenwood Genetics Center, which is kind of like our birthplace. He is board certified in clinical genetics and in pediatrics, and has seen probably more kids with PMS than anybody else walking on the planet. And I know that some of you are attending today and that you were in his capable hands throughout over the years. And he continues to see our patients today, which is really lucky for us. And he is also serving on our medical advisory committee. He is kind of like the gatekeeper for questions and queries from new families and older families as they face the various challenges of living with Phelan-McDermid syndrome. And we're really grateful for his continued participation. And he can tell you a little bit about how this all began.
Well, I guess I should first say how I began. I will be 70 in January, and I've had a 40-year career in genetics. And as of December, the end of December, I will be retiring from seeing patients at my office. I'll be retiring from the genetic center, but hopefully not retiring from Phelan-McDermid syndrome, and trying not to get choked up. 40 years has been a journey and very fulfilling and very academically stimulating. And the rewarding part is not the science, it's the relationships that have been made. So I'll go back to how I got started in Phelan-McDermid syndrome. If we go back to the original article from 1992, there was a little boy we had seen about a year before then, and he is actually still my patient now, and he was the first person described at the Greenwood Genetic Center with a 22q13.3 deletion. And once that article went into press, my friend Katy, the cytogeneticist, started getting requests and information about other children who had a similar chromosome deletion. And things appeared to just snowball from there until we had our first meeting in 1998. I will tell you, in that first meeting, I can't remember exactly the numbers. I bet Sue does, and she may talk about those. But for the first 2 or 3 meetings, and we started those in Greenville, South Carolina, because I lived in Greenville. There's an airport here. It was fairly easy to get in and out of, although you had to make a connection somewhere to get here, but fairly easy to get in and out of. And the Embassy Suites hosted us, and we started with really gathering information because we really did not know anything about Phelan-McDermid syndrome at that point. We knew about our patient, and we knew there were other people out there. And as the families got together, what we did was embark upon learning more, and we did that by starting our own little database, not the registry that we have now. We started a little database. We examined every patient at those first 2, 3, 4 meetings. I mean, I went to a lot of hotel rooms to see children and examine them. And we were trying to gather our information about what are the common features, how did the children present to get diagnosed, how were they diagnosed, how old were they? And don't think that these were all young children showing up, because there were some older individuals showing up to these early meetings. And for some reason, they had, over the year or 2 preceding the meeting, they started coming to, had been diagnosed. And I think that was an awareness on the fact that individuals with intellectual disability, whether children or adults, as our testing was evolving, we were able to diagnose more children, more adults. We were able to see things better on chromosome studies, and things have exploded now since we have microarrays that make it much easier to see very small deletions, and that has increased the involvement and diagnosis in the Phelan-McDermid Syndrome Foundation. So I'm sure Katy or Sue or Ronnie can give you the exact number in the foundation now as far as the number of folks in the registry, but I want to say it is way over 2,000. And it started again with this one young boy who Katy was excellent enough to detect this deletion. And we prepared that paper in 1993. It was published and the floodgates opened. And that's true of so many things in genetics that we see. One person writes a paper, then other people will start. You've got to remember, there was no Facebook back then. Nowadays, based on what we were able to do, and I really think we were pioneers in this area, we were able to start connecting families. And I think the foundation serves, and our starting these meetings serves as a model for how you start a support group for families and bring in that scientific component for physicians and other healthcare workers. And it has taken taken on a life of its own. You've got to remember, as Ronnie said, there was no foundation in 1998. So with help from the Greenwood Genetics Center and their financial backing and charging a little bit of money to the families, and there was another foundation that threw some money into the pot. We were able to have enough money to be able to rent those conference rooms and have our meetings and go from there. So that's kind of my story. I'm one of the ones who's been to every in-person meeting we've had. And again, those enduring relationships are what matter. I would ask everybody to keep Liv Toole in your prayers, because she has had a very uphill battle against aspiration and pneumonia in Australia. So, and I'm sure there are others out there that are battling medical illnesses. And I think we need to keep all of our kids in our prayers and pray for the best that can happen. So I'll leave it there before I start crying.
Thank you, Curtis. A beautiful piece of history, and we're so glad that you're still with us, and we expect you to be at the next Zumba class in 2024. So
I hope we have a meeting in 2024. I'm sick of COVID.
Now we're all tired of it. We're over it. We're meeting. Come heck or high water. Thank you. So next up, you heard Curtis mention a few of the people on the screen, but we're going to go over to Katy. Most of you know Dr. Katy Phelan well from our conferences, and she is my go-to very often when I get a genetic report from a family that is new and wondering what the future holds and what this diagnosis means. Curtis has also assisted me with that, and the two of them are always gentle and kind and thorough and educative, which is what our families need most. So Katy currently, she's here in Florida, native of Jacksonville, currently down in the Fort Myers area. So we're very glad that she's here and whole and able to join us after the hurricane. Unfortunately, her lab at Florida Cancer Specialist did not fare quite as well. So we know that she has that on her mind. Katy has her PhD in human genetics from the Medical College of Virginia, and she has done some postdoctoral fellowship in cytogenetics at the Greenwood Genetics Center, which is, of course, how she came to know Curtis. And she is currently serving on our scientific advisory committee. She is also still very involved with the American College of Medical Geneticists. She is a founding fellow there. So I'm going to let her tell the rest of her story and her first interaction with somebody who had Phelan-McDermid syndrome. So Katy, why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Ronnie. So I'll add a little more detail to what Curtis said. Am I on the screen?
You are.
Okay. So, because I still see Ronnie on my screen. Okay, I have speaker view up. Okay, so I'll add some more detail to what Curtis said. I was director of the chromosome lab at Greenwood. And when the clinical geneticists saw this first baby that we described, and we did pick up the deletion of chromosome 22 in the cytogenetics lab. And that was in 1988, Curtis.
Oh, well, that was right after he was born.
That was at birth. We found the deletion of 22.
He was hypotonic at birth.
That was the symptom.
He presented.
And he had a blocked tear duct.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did chromosomes and we saw the deletion, and there weren't any other cases that I could find in the literature. So we thought it was first worth reporting. So we actually did a case report that fall at the American Society of Human Genetics meeting. And then we decided we needed to do a better workup. So we actually, I contacted Heather McDermid to do molecular studies on him, because she was known to study, I knew she studied chromosome 22 because she did work on cat eye syndrome, a duplication of chromosome 22. And our molecular lab we did X-linked intellectual disabilities. We weren't concentrating on chromosome 22. So that's how I came to get in contact with Heather McDermid. I didn't know her. I just knew her reputation that she studied chromosome 22. So she agreed to do the DNA studies on our patient. And we also did biochemical studies on him, and fortuitously looked at aryl sulfatase A, which turned out to be one of the probes that we used to look at deletions of chromosome 22. And so we did a thorough workup, and we didn't publish the case report until 1992 because the biochemical results, interestingly, took 4 years to get back. So we finally published that in 92. And after that was published, that's when we started getting phone calls. Since I was the first author, I was the one that was getting called by the parents or getting letters from the parents. Again, like Curtis said, no internet. And they would want to know what the family in Greenwood was like. Did they chew their clothes? Did they have flaky toenails? What did this child do? And so Greenwood is an interesting place. They don't say only the medical doctors can talk to the families. You know, even though I was a lab doctor, I was allowed to call the family, the mom, and say, hey, do you want to talk to this family in Ohio? Do you want to talk to this family? Can I give out your phone number? And, you know, find out, you know, can I just give your number to anybody who has a deletion of 22q and wants to talk to you, you know, started connecting families with each other. But I would talk to the other family and say, well, the mom in Greenwood says her child does this, is your child, and start learning about what the children did, ask them questions and connect them to each other. And so over the years, I learned that the families wanted, of course, to meet other families, and that they had taken vacations even to meet another family if they knew another family. And they wanted a name. They didn't want to just be deletion 22q13. They wanted to call it something like other people had Down syndrome. They didn't want to just be a number. They wanted to be a name. So in the next several years, I had about 9 families that I knew. And I knew that they wanted a name and they wanted to meet people. So in 1998, one of our other doctors happened to play golf with a man named Bill Danielson. And Bill had a foundation in honor of his son, Michael, the Michael Foundation. And he indicated that he would be willing, if we wrote a grant at the Greenwood Genetics Center, to maybe give us some money for a special project. And so the director of Greenwood, Roger Stevenson, thought since Bill's son had a chromosome abnormality, it should go, the cytogenetics lab should write a grant and maybe we could get funding for a special project. Well, my lab was very well equipped. I didn't really need anything, but I did want to have a support group meeting for these families. So my project was, you know, maybe I could get funding and have a meeting to bring these families down. And I never had a support group meeting before, but maybe we could bring them down, get them together, introduce them. And you know, so that was the special project, to have a support group meeting for these 9 families that I knew. Wouldn't that be a great project? So I wrote a little grant that, yes, I'm going to bring these families down for, I don't know how long, I don't know where I'm going to put them, but we're going to have a meeting and have these families together. So we got a grant to have a support group meeting from the Michael Foundation. So they gave us some money, and I recruited Curtis, and his counselor, Gail Stapleton, was an integral part of organizing this meeting, because they were in Greenville, and I knew we had to have it up there, not Greenwood, because they had the airport, they had the embassy suites, they had all the facilities that we didn't have 50 miles away or however far Greenwood is. And so we planned a meeting for August, and Gail helped with the facilities, and we had all the medical geneticists go up there. The staff from the genetics center, they were the babysitters, and you know, we recruited speakers. we paid for the hotel rooms, we paid for the transportation, we paid for the meals, we paid everything, but I think the flights for the families to come to that first meeting. We thought we had all the money in the world, and it was fun. I think we had a good time. And there was a beauty pageant there. The Carolina Sugar Babies were there. It was really, and we were there. It was a lot of fun. And so, you know, it was nice. I mean, the Greenwood Genetic Center, they want to take care of you, take care of, you know, they didn't think it was a crazy idea, that I thought, I have 9 families with a rare disorder. Why don't we just bring them down here and help them? And yeah, that's a great idea, Katie. Why don't you do that? So that's what we did. And then 2 years later, I guess at that meeting, we decided we should meet every 2 years. So we had another meeting in 2000. And that year, I think there was a wedding in the lobby of the meeting, you know, so we wanted to have a little special event that goes on at the same time of our meeting, right? And then that was in Columbia, South Carolina. The next year was 2002. That year I had a cerebral hemorrhage. That was our special event. I had a stroke.
Yeah.
Event, all right.
That was our special event. I ended up in the hospital. After that, we didn't have any more special events at our meeting.
That was enough.
Yes, I remember taking Katie to the hospital and having to call her sister and tell her,
Oh my
I
gosh.
think she's had a stroke,
You have to
because
come up from Atlanta.
Katie could not write legibly. She couldn't see well. I said, I think you have a stroke. I called a friend of mine who's a neurologist and said, what do I do? Take her to the emergency room and let's get her a CT scan or an MRI. And so I was actually in the radiology suite as they have Katie in the machine. And I will admit, when I saw her scan, I said, holy, a bad word. And Katie, I think, read my lips.
I could see you through the window.
Oh no.
And she's going, oh my gosh, what is it?
Now, I'm laying on the cot and I can see these guys, and when they see the film, they're all jumping up and down like this. And I said, I can see you. You see something.
So but being the trooper that Katie is, what day was that? Was that Friday, Katie?
That was Thursday.
Yeah, that would've been
I think it was Thursday. It was Thursday.
Okay.
When we went to the hospital.
Being the trooper, Katie,
That's
is
right.
she was back at that meeting.
Mhm.
I did come back.
Yep.
Yes, you did.
I told my doctors either I go back to Atlanta with my sisters and go shopping, or go back to the Embassy Suites and behave myself and sit in a meeting. What would you rather me do? Go back. So I went back to the meeting.
How long did it take you to fully recover, Katie?
I had surgery in October. So that was what, end of July, that meeting was.
Yeah. And then, yeah, but you had surgery, but you weren't fully recovered.
No, they said like 6 months after that. I'm still not recovered. I just blame everything on that damn stroke. So.
I wasn't going to say anything, but
Oh,
No, I don't know. I can blame everything on that for as long as I live, you know? So anyway,
I can blame you for that.
The only reason I bring that up is because that forced my good friend Sue Lomas to get up and get to the microphone and take charge of the meeting, because she gets there and wants to know, where's Katie? Katie's supposed to be talking.
the hell is Kate? But
Katie's in the hospital. Sue's in charge now. So Sue had to take control because I was farting around laying down in the hospital. So anyway.
not that she wasn't telling me what to do. She just was writing it down.
That's right. I couldn't even write at that time. Anyway, so that was 2002. And so then we kept meeting, and our mission was to educate the medical community. So we published a lot of articles, we spoke at meetings, we traveled all over the place, and we still continue to do that, of course. We do try to do clinical research, as Curtis said, to identify the causes and the features. We, after the 2000 meeting, we published a review article where we described almost 40 individuals that had come to our meeting and 24 that had been described in the literature. So we wanted to put out a review to make everybody aware of this deletion syndrome. And I was actually trying to see when the first time the name Phelan-McDermid syndrome was used in the literature, because I couldn't remember, and we named it that, but and the first time I saw was in our 2005 chapter, Curtis, in Management of Genetic Syndromes.
Okay.
we called it 22q13 syndrome and then Phelan-McDermid syndrome in parentheses. So I don't know if we were the first ones to use that name or not. I'm surprised that they would let us name that in a chapter if it hadn't been used elsewhere in the literature before that, but I don't know. And then other people picked up on it, I guess. I don't know. So that's what we've been doing for the past 20 years, publishing articles, traveling around, trying to educate people and helping whenever we can. So that's my story. Thanks.
Thank you, Katie. You know, those papers are still listed in the bibliography of almost every piece of research that comes out today. They are the foundations of understanding of the syndrome and still relevant. And many of you know that recently we updated the definition of Phelan-McDermid syndrome, and Katie spearheaded that effort together with the other members of the SAC and Curtis's involvement as well. So we're really grateful that we continue to have your expertise here. And whether you retire from your day jobs or not, I think that you're part of this forever. There is no retiring from PMSF for you, for either of you, for any of you. Anyway, next up is Sue Lomas. And Sue is our founder, our past president, past executive director. She is the mom of Sammy, who has the distinction of being the first child with PMS who was diagnosed in vitro, which she can tell you more about in a moment. She brought me into the fold. And
Do you mean in utero?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, that was, sorry. Thank you, doctor. Obviously, still working towards that medical degree, not quite there.
See what happens when you're around Katie and I, Ronnie? See what happens?
It's always trouble. That's why I try studiously to avoid any contact, and I fail every time. Having you both nearby is going to be the death of me. So you guys might be coming to my funeral first. Anyway, so going back to Sue, she graduated from Boston College. Sue was an educator and teacher, and then she worked in a software company where she met the lovely Rich Lomas, who also was quite instrumental in getting the foundation off the ground. She traveled all over the world as a project manager, and then settled down finally in Sarasota County. She was very active in Sammy's school, Oak Park, here in Sarasota, which is a special school for kids who have challenges. And she continues to be involved with many of the families that she knows and loves from that period in her life. And she continues to be my go-to for all questions, anxiety attacks, freakouts. And I'm really grateful that she has been there and supported me through all of this and continues to interact with families, to spread awareness everywhere. She runs a great fundraiser called Sammy's Run that helps buy equipment for kids whose parents like to run. So they're able to participate as well, just like any other runner, which is awesome. And before I steal all the rest of her story, I'm going to turn it over to you, Sue.
Well, thanks, Ronnie. And Denise, thank you. And Kathy, if you're still around. I'm not sure, but
she's there.
Yeah. So I'll try not to get emotional like Curtis, but I might. So this is the story I would tell for the new families at conference. And this is really the beginning, that Sam was diagnosed in utero. And as far as we know, the first one, I don't know if there's any other, and we absolutely had no idea what that was, but we were referred to a geneticist in Miami. And just by coincidence, she remembered Katie's article. And one of those families in the article happened to live in the same town as we did, so in Naples. And so just by serendipity, who knows why, but we ended up having a home nurse. Sam was born premature, 2 pounds, 4 ounces, 5 months in the NICU. And when we came home, we had a nurse come and help us. And that nurse worked with Debbie Bouchard, who was the family in Katie's article, Caitlin, Debbie, and Corey Bouchard. And we met them about a year after Sam was home and found out more about 22q13 deletion. So it was purely coincidental. We went to the right geneticist, we had the right nurse, and we met Debbie. And we met Debbie, and then we met Katie. Debbie told us about the first gathering in 1998. Sam was born in 94. And I don't tell many people this, and I know this is on a Zoom, and I know it's recorded, and I know it's going out in the sphere here. But we had just gotten married, and the very first thing we did was come to Greenville. That was our honeymoon. And so we went to Greenville. And to be honest, and I don't know if Nick felt this way, but I didn't like it, really. I really was, it's almost 4 now. I was scared. We met Eric, who was 25 at the time. They were not my people. That's what I thought. I thought, I can't come back. I'm not coming back. And I befriended Katy and Curtis and started to talk to them as Curtis said, aging us, because Katy and Curtis and I are similar ages. No internet, no email, no nothing, just phones, right? And so I started to talk with Katy and Gail. Thank God for Gail. Please say hi to Gail for us. Gail Stapleton. I helped start talking about the 2000 conference. I don't know what changed my mind. Maybe Katy, I think, and Curtis. I'm not sure, but as I tell every new family, and I don't know if there are new families listening now, maybe they'll watch it later. I'm not sure, but it's hard. It's hard to do. It's hard to make that leap, but we did, and we came back and helped start organizing. And then, like Katy said, in 2002, she pushed me in the forefront, and so but really in 2000, and I think Nick will say this, in 2002, we thought, it wasn't Katy and Curtis's responsibility. It was ours. And we felt like, even though people said, let's start a nonprofit, and I had been running a nonprofit in Naples for horseback riding therapy, I said, no, this is way too hard. You don't want to do this. We decided we should do that. So in 2002, we had people volunteer for the board. And from 2002 until around year 2018, we did have some employees in between, but it was temporary. It was pretty much all volunteer, not totally, but and all parent volunteer. And those parents, the first board meeting, I try to remember all of them. Some are still involved, some are not, but they stepped up. And every board member since then, and committee members, and all the parents who volunteered. It's just been amazing. And so we formed the nonprofit, and so we started to meet. I remember going to a genetics conference with our kids, and Katy and Curtis, and the kids were up being sort of touted about Phelan-McDermid. I don't know if it was called that then, but they were explaining the deletion, and Sam and
That's in
and Jake,
Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah, that was a Charleston meeting.
Charleston.
Yeah, and so we would go around and have board meetings, and all of it was volunteer. We paid ourselves. We tried, for ourselves. We tried to start organizing, and we started to organize like regional reps and fundraising. And so, for example, Denise and Kurt Kester, they are the ones that, Denise especially, because she'll be mad that I don't say that. Denise especially started the 22 campaign. She came up with that idea, and it's really, people like Megan have taken it to a new height, right? So people just kept stepping up and doing things. The conference, especially planning the conference, is such a big deal. Denise, as you know now, it's a hard thing to do, right? It's very complicated. So there's so many parents that stepped up, and I recognize that a lot of rare diseases are started by parents, but it takes a lot. And I think all of these parents are just tough as nails, and they did all of this. We didn't have our first non-parent on the board until Mary Cobb, and I want to say 2012. I'm not sure, but that was the first time we had a non-parent. So many years, and we started to go to conferences. Like we went to a Society for Neuroscience, and we were we were so out of our league. We had a table that we sort of handmade, and people walked by us, it said 22Q13 deletion, and they were looking at us. But then finally, when we got some kind of autism connection, that there was a connection between Phelan-McDermid and autism, we started to get a little traction, and we started to go to more conferences, and we started to meet more people, and Mount Sinai and people in Europe. And so it just started to grow, and it's really because of so many beautiful, lovely families and professionals like Katy and Curtis and so many others. It just really has been a labor of love, right? Tiny bit frustrating, but I feel sometimes I tell Katy that we made her famous, although she made herself famous, but we made her famous when we named it Phelan-McDermid, but we made Heather McDermid a mystery, right? So she has been a mystery. But she came the first couple conferences, I think, Kate, right? And we saw her, was it the last time? No, the gala in Canada.
Yeah,
Where was
in
it?
Montreal.
That?
Yeah,
Montreal.
Yeah.
Montreal.
And I'm introducing her to Jen and different people, and they're all like so excited to meet Heather McDermid. Like, who is she? So she's still around. We still keep in contact, but she's not quite as involved as, well, not as involved as certainly as Katy and Curtis. So I think that we did the best we could. We tried. We started from scratch, and we talked to Angelman syndrome and Prader-Willi here in Sarasota, and all these other groups. People reached out. Megan did, and Geraldine did, and Randy and Nick and everyone. They reached out to see how we do this, right? Then we started Global Partners with the help of Mike Francis and Jen, and people told us we couldn't do it. People told us, you'll be fractured, you'll be split apart, you'll have so many groups, but this is what it is. It's this community is so family that it's been so working together and trying to be helping each other, and I have my Australia shirt on, you can't see because I'm so short, but and I'm trying to support and help them grow as a foundation. And Katy and I had the privilege of traveling to many meetings in England, and Allison in France, and Adage and Francois and different people, and really such a huge pleasure to do all that. Hopefully you can, Ronnie, and some of us can start doing that again whenever that opens up. But I think I believe in the whole worldwide thing, the whole supportive thing. And that's what we tried to do with everyone's help. It wasn't just us. It was all of us. That's all.
A lot. Thank you, Sue. It's just an incredible history. Okay. Last but certainly not least, I want to introduce Nick Assendelft. Nick is the former vice president of the foundation, also one of the founders, as you heard, and goes way back with Sue. They are very funny together. I haven't seen them together in a while, but there's a kind of little sibling thing that goes on that's pretty entertaining.
I'm the older sibling, so just remember that.
Good of you to assert that.
I wasn't going to say that you're older.
So Nick has been involved from the very beginning in 2002, and he served up until 2020 on the board, working with volunteers, working on fundraising, conference planning. His area of expertise is communications. That's what he does for his profession. And he started the newsletter at Phelan-McDermid Syndrome, among many of the other communications that were the basis of what was in place when I came in. And I learned a lot from reading back over time and trying to get my arms around the history of the organization. So I was grateful to have all of that archived information. Nick is also the dad of Jake, a very brief cameo appeared earlier, if you were lucky enough to see him flit in and out. and he can tell you the rest of his story.
All right, thanks, Ronnie. And yeah, Jake is making some noise in the background, so I might get interrupted a little bit, or he might come wandering
Right.
around. He likes to just kind of wander in the house, so that's kind of nice. Again, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for everybody at the foundation for putting on this this program here. I think this is a really great opportunity to talk about our history. Thanks, of course, to Curtis and Katie and Sue for everything they've done from the beginning, and before the parents were involved. And it's just unbelievable over the years how everything has come together and how we've gotten to where we are today. Curtis had said at the time when we met, there was no foundation in 1998, but I would say that we built a foundation. We built a foundation on which everything has been built, from that point on. And just like a building or a tree, it just has grown exponentially. And it's kind of interesting sometimes to just sit back and, kind of shake your head and say, I can't believe this is, this is where we are, and this is where we're headed. And, doing things that we would never have thought about in 1998 and accomplishing things that we never would have dreamt. But it's because of all the families and the staff now that we're reaching such great heights. So our story, we had Jake was our second child, and probably like a lot of parents who are listening or will listen to this, we just kind of noticed that things weren't just progressing as they should be. And most people say, well, don't worry, we have an older daughter too. So it's like, oh, don't worry, don't measure them together, we'll see how it goes. So finally, we just said, we got to get this checked out. We live in New York at the time. We drove to Albany, got the diagnosis, which was, quite a shock. Originally, there was some suspicion maybe it was Fragile X, or maybe there was a couple other different things, but we ended up getting this diagnosis, and we said to the geneticist or whoever it was that we were meeting with and said, well, what does this mean? And they were kind of like, we don't know. If we find anything else, we'll get in touch with you. And of course, we never heard from them again. So it just kind of showed that, at the time, nobody knew anything about it, at least that we knew at the time. There were obviously some people like Curtis and Katie who were kind of building that wealth of knowledge. But this foundation is built on family connections and built on families, and that's how we got involved. I believe, Katie, you were in touch with the Seilers in Ohio, and they reached out to us and said, hey, we're here if you want to talk. They have a son named Nick, and he's roughly Jake's age, and said, if you want to talk, if you ever want to just parent to parent, or just what it's like to have a special needs child. And we never had a special needs child, obviously, and just through that connection. And then she got us connected with the genetics center, got us connected with the upcoming support group meeting, the first one, and we're like, oh, we're going. We are not going to miss this. We are going. I think that, it's probably, I think there was probably a year of preparation type thing, or at least a year. It wasn't as quick as with Sue, where you essentially got your diagnosis, got married, and went off to the meeting. We had a little bit of a window there, but either way, we weren't going to miss it. 23 families, I believe, was the number that was there, wide range of ages. Jake at the time was, I think, 2 years old, maybe 3 years old. We obviously had our daughter with us too. She's 4 years older than Jake. And I wouldn't say that I was, distraught in any way, or, had any kind of fear of returning, but it was certainly, we thought we were just gonna go there and meet families. And, we didn't quite put the pieces together to say, well, all these families have special needs kids, and they all have, different special needs and different, all in different, levels and whatnot. So it was an eye opener for us, certainly. I think an eye opener in the sense that, this is a whole new world that we're entering with special needs community. And, but we got to meet some great friends. There's a family about an hour and a half north of us here, and I'm in the Detroit area, just north of Detroit, and there's a family about an hour and a half north of us, and we didn't meet them until we got down to Greenville. And, you know, we're still friends with them. They have a daughter, Katy, and same age as Jake. And, you know, they have a dairy farm. I went up to the farm and visit them all the time. And, you know, just building those kind of relationships. And, you know, Dan Carell and I always joke, we had to go to Greenville to meet each other when we lived an hour and a half away. But, you know, it's just amazing the networking you do, the number of people you get to know. You know, it's just amazing how many people you know around the world that you never would have met, and just fantastic people. You know, we couple remembrances from that first conference and other conference as well. Curtis talked about drawing blood. Well, he drew blood from the kid. But they had to draw blood from the parents too, all the time. I don't know what they did with the blood and why they ran out of it between conferences, but you know, we always have to roll up our sleeves and we have to give blood. Not my favorite thing to do. But you know, just like our kids, we were all troopers, and we did what we had to do because we knew it was important, and it was important to learning about the syndrome, and it was important to, you know, furthering the cause. Yeah, at that first conference too, with the beauty pageant, you know, Embassy Suites has 3 elevators, and you got, I don't know, 9, 12 floors, so you all have to pack into these 3 elevators, and to see our kids and these other kids in the beauty pageant that are made up, they're 4 or 5 years old, and they got the frilly dresses and all the makeup and the hair all done, and they got our kids kind of, you know, chewing on lanyards and, you know, shaking their arms and kicking around. It was just really kind of an interesting contrast. But you know, those kids were great and our kids were great. You know, I mean, it doesn't matter whether they have special needs or not. I mean, they're our kids, and we love them to death, and we love all the other kids in the foundation as well. And so, yeah, we built, you know, I've been to every conference since then with our family. You know, the foundation grew out of that conference. You know, we had to pass the hat to collect some money. I think at the second conference to pay for the newsletter, you know, because at the time I would take it over to Kinko's and print it and stuck it in envelopes and put stamps on it. But now, of course, you know, it's, you know, seamless to do it all electronically, and that's the way everybody communicates nowadays. But you know, that kind of shows over 20 years how much things have changed, not just in our own lives outside of the special needs community, but you know, things have just progressed so quickly. But you know, indeed, you know, it's been a labor of love, and you know, it was difficult stepping back when we stepped down from the board, because you know, it's like, you know, sending your child off to college, right? It's kind of like, you know, we hate to cut the strings, but we know it, you know, it's in good hands, and we know there's a lot of families behind us that are just as passionate and just as eager to do things and help out in ways that they can. And you know, but you know, connecting like this with the foundation, staying in touch with families, you know, the foundation is always still there for us. So that's the wonderful thing. So that's my story, and that's where I'll leave it.
Thank you, Nick. You know, many things have changed and many things have not, right? I mean, I think our membership, Curtis was saying earlier, was it above 2,000, and it's around 3,200 worldwide, which is a lot of people. And so it is a challenge, you know, to try to keep the root of how this was created as a part of our integral part of the culture. You know, some of you may or may not know that the board bylaws read that there will always be a majority of family members on the board. And we've tried to replicate that with staff as well. So we have 10 staff now, and 6 of those staff are family members, because we really want to honor the way that this started in the feeling. It's not always easy when you have 3,200 people to be able to sustain a feeling of intimacy. And I think the lack of conference and COVID really made it even more difficult. And I am just so excited for new families to have the experiences that all of you have had of coming together, because there's nothing like it. I mean, I still think that a pivotal moment for me definitely was going to the 2018 conference, because other than Sam and maybe 1 or 2 other people who had come by the office, I had never seen anyone with Phelan-McDermid syndrome until I went to the conference. And I was about 6 months into 7 months in to my position at the time. And I still remember that feeling in the morning of coming down the elevator in the Embassy Suites and seeing this sea of t-shirts and green and kids running around, and everybody was watching everybody else's kids, and everybody was comfortable. Nobody stared. Nobody asked horrible questions. I mean, it was just this warm, incredible environment. And I look forward to offering that again to those of you who have been before, and those of you who have yet to experience it. So thank you all so much. And thank you all also for always being there for me and for the staff when we need your expertise and your helping hands. I'm going to turn it over to Denise. We had asked people to submit questions when they registered. So we have a list there. There is also a Q&A box. I don't know that we'll get to everything, but we're going to try. So Denise, I'm going to let you be the MC for the Q&A.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, because everybody talked about the 2018 conference, that was my first conference as well. And I work on conferences for a living. And I have to say that my initial, impression, reaction was just, again, the camaraderie, the family, the community. And, Ronnie, kind of like you alluded to, everybody looking out for each other and, embracing each other. And it was the happiest group that I personally have ever worked with, despite the day-to-day challenges, and that definitely, impacted me and made me want to be more involved. And obviously I always thought if I have spare time, I want to dedicate it to my nephew, Jonathan, and he lives in Boston. I live in Myrtle Beach. Distance, makes it a little difficult. So this was my way of being able to be there for him and support him, and obviously my sister and my brother-in-law. So anyways, my turn. So I'm going to actually ask the same question for all four of you. It's come up several times, and I think it's a great question, is where do you envision the foundation in the next 20 years? And we'll start with you, Katy.
Where do I envision it? In 20 years, I'd like to have a lot more money. And I'd like to have more, maybe full-time staff. We have, let's see, maybe full-time, I don't know, I think we're doing pretty well now, but like we have Kate Stills, a part-time
Kate is
scientific.
full-time. We have 3 full-time.
She's full-time?
Yeah,
Oh, I
we have
thought she
3
was
full-time
part-time.
staff.
Oh, good. Okay, I thought she was part-time. I'd like to have more in terms of the research and scientific directorship. I don't know what we have in terms of this staff, but I'd like to have more staffing if we had a lot of money. So I'd like to have more money to direct towards supporting the families and supporting research. That's what I'd like to see the foundation go towards in the future.
What about you, Sue?
So I think everyone wants more research and more progress in that end, right? I think that's a given. Not that it's easy, but it's a given. But for me, I think that we have to support global because it is my passion. I have to admit that. But I think that if we help these other countries establish themselves and get involved with scientists and different things, different people, doctors and whatnot, I think that would benefit us as a whole. And if it's possible, even if we get to, I hope we don't have one more diagnosis. I mean, everyone hopes that, but if we get to more diagnoses, it's such a difficult thing to say, but we need to stick together globally. That's what I hope. I hope we stay strong internationally, that we still support each other like that.
Thanks, Sue. How about you, Nick?
Well, with the speed at which research and developments are progressing nowadays, I would like to see the foundation not being needed. I'd like it, to have served its purpose in terms of, supporting families and supporting that research. But I'd love it in 20 years if we didn't need a foundation because we have the therapeutics, so we have the cure for 22q13 Phelan-McDermid syndrome.
Amen.
All right, Curtis, your turn.
I will echo what Nick said, I think research and the key to understanding fully what causes all the clinical and neurodevelopmental features of Phelan-McDermid syndrome will lead us to possible treatments. Unlike Nick, I'm going to say I think a foundation and a support group will always be needed, because I think there will always be those new families who are out there a little bit lost, floating in the ocean of not knowing what their child's future may hold. Not that we have a crystal ball, but I think meeting all the different families gives them a much better handle on the needs that their child may experience, and the ability, I think, to face those with the courage and determination necessary. I always tell families that have a child with special needs, in a biblical sense, you better gird your loins, because you're in for a hell of a fight. And that has to do with dealing with not just the medical field, but education, therapies, things like that. And the other thing I say, and I'm from South Carolina, so I can say this, in a redneck sense, you better get a 2x4, because you may need to get somebody's attention every now and then. So I think the foundation, and I can't begin to tell you how many letters I've written to all over, not just over the United States, but all over the world, for families seeking support from their educational system, their local government, and trying to help them obtain those services for their child. And that's, I think the foundation carries with it the strength of the numbers and the experience to be able to advocate with the parents for their child. I see that continue. And I really, we can talk about treatment and things like that, but I really see that as the ongoing strongest role of the foundation.
Wow.
Is advocating for
Wow. Wow.
See, Jake agrees.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. I think my next one is going to be more on the fun side as we start to look. I can't believe I'm going to say this, towards 2024 and our next conference. But thinking back on your favorite conference memory, Nick, what was your favorite conference memory?
Boy, that's a hard one, because there's so many good ones over the years. You know, I think the one thing that families like the most, and what I think we found most valuable, is just having that time to network with each other. You know, there's so much that obviously we want to say at conferences, and so many people we want to have to speak, and so much new information you want to impart, and you know, but man, you know, that time just being one-on-one or in a group, whether it's, you know, over a couple of drinks or a dinner or whatever the case may be, I think that's probably the favorite memory of all the conferences, is just having that opportunity to just meet new people and just sit down and, you know, hey, does your kid do this? Or it doesn't even necessarily have to do with the kids. It's just having that connection, because, you know, as even with 3,000 families, it's still rare, right? And your chances of finding somebody in your community or in your city, Sue excluded there with her story, but the chances of finding somebody that's walking in your shoes and dealing with the same thing with Phelan-McDermid syndrome is so rare. It's just that chance to sit down and, yeah, nobody's judging you, and you just get a chance to talk. And I think that's really the favorite memory that I have of the conference.
How about you, Sue?
Okay, so I've had a minute to think about it. Drinking is not one of them, but not bad. But
Yeah, right.
So I want to say, just three popped into my head. One is either the first or second conference when we brought DVD players and everybody was like, oh my God, DVD players at watching Barney or whatever. And everyone's in the corner. Everyone's like suddenly in the corner. And then the next conference, everyone had a DVD player. And it was just like the greatest thing for the kids. And then there was one conference that Sam actually started to walk. He, for the first time with our caregiver, Marcy, who now runs another foundation, he walked through the lobby and we were just like stunned, right? So that is an awesome personal one. But there was another one that was so fantastic for me. And Nick, I don't know if Katie and Curtis remember, but Nick, you will. When Facebook first started, everyone's talking to each other and I go to the conference, you're doing this, I can't wait. And we had a Facebook meetup. They never had seen each other. They never had met each other, but Facebook had started and it was like 100 people there. It was like so crazy. And it was so great because they had been talking to each other and they finally met face to face. That was awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, Curtis?
I will say my favorite memories revolve around trying to help families answer questions and get medical information, because that's my way of meeting all the families. And for those of us who grew up playing football, I equate it to what we call bull in the ring, because I remember one meeting where we had tables all around in a circle, and I was in the middle of this circle, and it was rather intimidating, even for me. And I don't get easily intimidated, but just questions coming from every direction and spinning around and trying to make eye contact and answer those questions. But that, to me, again, is what the foundation is about, is giving that information and that support that's needed for the families. And I'm always impressed that the incredible hunger for that information. And that's not a one-time thing, but it's something that means a lot to me, that these families are hopeful. They're working toward helping their children reach their maximum potential, which is what we all should do as parents.
Good one. Thank you. Katie.
This probably shouldn't be a favorite memory, but it just has stayed so vivid with me. One meeting, I was walking into the family dinner and Nick comes running out. I'm glad you're here. Some child's having a seizure. I'm like, he's punking me because I don't know what to do for a seizure. Do you remember this, Nick?
Yeah.
So we go inside.
I remember. Yeah.
And Davis Wood is laying on the floor. He's had a seizure. What the hell do I know about seizures? So I go and I sit on the floor with Cheryl and Rick Wood, and Davis is on the floor. And what are we going to do? So we get the Embassy Suite staffs to bring us tablecloths to put on his head, tablecloths to cover him up. And Cheryl's worried that he's scaring people. I said, no, Cheryl, this is good because you're so calm. If he's having a seizure and he's just lying here still and you're calm and Rick's calm, it's good for the other families to see this because you're not panicking. So they're not going to be afraid. It's really, really good. It's great. It's great. So his service dog is up in the room, I think, and his chair's up in the room and everything. So Troy Roden goes up to get the chair or get whatever they need. And we're still on the floor with Davis and everything's taken care of. And I guess Troy gets the chair and Davis is ready. You know, they put him in the chair and they take him up and everything. The Embassy Suites is going to take him food. And Troy's like, what can I do? What can I do? I said, take him some drinks. So Troy takes drinks up and everything. And then Curtis finally shows up. Oh, Curtis, I should have been here.
I'm Curtis.
Yeah.
Davis had a seizure. I didn't know what to do. Curtis says, what did you do? I said, I sent him drinks. Curtis like, good. And he may have gone up to check on him. I don't know.
I did.
You did.
Yes.
Do we get along, Ronnie?
Curtis was probably late because he was drawing blood from somebody. So, you know.
It might have been. Or I live in Greenville, so I might have gone home for a little bit. I was not staying at the embassy.
You probably came from home. You probably ate at home and came in. But But my favorite aspect of all the meetings overall is, I mean, not my favorite, one of my favorite things is watching the siblings grow up together.
Mm.
So that's a
Absolutely.
valuable thing that I have really, really enjoyed. I love watching the children grow up, but also a side thing that we don't talk about a lot is watching the siblings grow up together, because seeing them come in as kind of self-conscious kids that, you know, my sibling does this and it's so embarrassing, but then they don't have to be embarrassed anymore because everybody's sibling does this, and watch them take care of each other's. Like in the Dallas meeting, Ronnie, you know, you might have seen like, okay, I got him, you know, your child's
Mhm.
brother's pulling his pants down, I got him, you know, and taking care of each other's. I mean, it's just so warm and
Easy.
loving to see that. That's one of my favorite parts of the meeting every year, every time we have it.
Mhm.
I love that.
Great point.
All right, I have a couple more questions. I'm going to actually turn a little scientific. So yeah, so
So get ready, Nick.
yeah, right. One of the questions is there any correlation between PMS and not turning in the womb, resulting in a cesarean section?
I'll answer that one.
I guess you're not asking me that question, Denise.
Well, did Sammy turn in the womb? He was born so early, though.
I don't think that's the reason we had to go to the hospital, because he wasn't moving at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the reason for that is the neurological impairment, which leads to low muscle tone or hypotonia. So that, as well as the effects on the brain, lead to a decreased movement. So things you might notice prenatally would be decreased fetal movement from the neurologic impairment. Another thing that you might notice is extra amniotic fluid, because that same neurological issue can impair swallowing, and decreased swallowing leads to increased amniotic fluid. So polyhydramnios, or increased amniotic fluid, with decreased fetal movement would be two signs of neurologic impairment, with PMS being just one of the many, many causes for that.
Thank you, Curtis. Katie, one question for you. Are smaller deletions more severe than larger deletions?
No, they're smaller deletions. You would expect the converse to be true, that a larger deletion, an individual with a larger deletion, there's a tendency, not 100% correlation, but there's a tendency for individuals with larger deletions to have more serious, more severe features than a person with a small deletion, because you're missing more genes if you have a large deletion. So you would expect someone with a larger deletion to have more severe phenotype than somebody with a smaller deletion. And when there have been genotype phenotype studies, there is a tendency for people with larger deletions to have a more serious phenotype than people with smaller deletions.
Thank you.
And I'm not a scientist here, but Katie, do you want to mention also mosaic, because that's what Jake is, right? He's only missing the chromosome on 30%, or the genetic material only 30% of his chromosomes, but he still, you know, is, you know, manifests with all the characteristics of Phelan-McDermid syndrome.
Yeah, so there's, it's not 100% correlation, because there are other factors that come into place. When you have a deletion, you're missing material on one chromosome 22, but you're uncovering genes on your normal 22 that wouldn't otherwise be expressed. So you might have adverse genes on your normal 22 that wouldn't be expressed normally, but now you've uncovered those genes by having a deletion on 122. You're uncovering recessive genes on your normal 22 that ordinarily wouldn't be expressed. So you're uncovering genes that wouldn't be expressed by having a deletion. And you also have background genetics that are also playing into the expression of the phenotype. So there are other background genetic factors that are playing into anybody that has a chromosome deletion that add to the phenotype. But also, like Nick said, his son's got mosaicism. So does he have 3 different cell lines or just 2 cell lines?
I think just 2.
So as a normal 22 in some cells, and then a deletion 22 or a ring 22 or something?
Just a deletion.
A deletion in some cells and a ring in the other. Yeah, I mean, a deletion in a normal cell line.
I think the other thing to remember is we do our
Which cells?
testing in blood,
Yeah,
and what you see in the blood may not correlate with the level of mosaicism in brain tissue, for instance. So there could be 80% of the cells in the brain tissue that have the deletion, have that particular karyotype or chromosome composition. And different organs may have different percentages of mosaicism.
That's a good point.
You. Sue, this one's for you. What do you think makes this community so unique?
I think I'm mute.
What's that?
I thought you were on mute. It looked like you were talking about.
Oh, well, I've heard people say that, but I don't really know how to compare it to other communities. I mean, I went to a school with a lot of kids with different diagnoses, and they were amazed at what we did, right? How we interacted, how we had conferences, how we did it. So there are a lot of people out there who don't have communities, I suppose. But other communities, I don't really know how. I think I don't really know what they're like. Maybe they're splintered, but for us, I think what it is right away, we bring them in to say, look, we're a family. That's it. You know, it's like if you meet someone you went to, oh, I'm from that town, or I went to that college, or I went to, all of a sudden you have this bond, right? And it just, that's it. That's it. It's a bond, no matter what. And I have to think other communities do that, but I'm not part of them, so I don't know.
Fair.
Oh, I'm going to step in for a second to say that I often see in groups with other leaders in rare disease, they ask a lot about how do we deal with conflict in our community and infighting. And I always sit on the sideline and think, we don't have that. If anything, we have quite the opposite. I mean, if someone is hurting or their child is sick or whatever, the news spreads quickly throughout the whole community and the support comes flooding in afterwards. But I really don't know of conflicts from family to family at all. Our experience, I think, is somewhat unique in that area, that there is a type of love from one family to the other. And, you know, you see how people refer, like when we talk about Liv Toole, I mean, she's on the other end of the earth. But people will say, you know, my son or daughter's sibling in Australia is in a bad place right now and needs your prayers and your support. So it's that concept of family, I think, is infused here in a way that it's not in many other organizations.
And I think that's a reflection of how the organization grew. I think it's, as Nick mentioned, a tree, and I think that's a good description, starting as a small sprout and then growing and adding leaves, members into that, but they're all part of that root tree that is deeply founded with the early members, and has spread its really spread its bough over the entire world.
Yeah, I think as Ronnie has learned these last few years, I mean, when a crisis happens, we all feel it. You feel it 24/7. You do, Denise, the same with, and it's just, to me, I think this is the way it is. So if other groups are not like that, it would be I wouldn't understand that.
Totally fair. Good. Thank you. I'm going to ask one more scientific question that just popped in. And this is, what are the phenotype differences with ring 22 type of PMS?
What are the what?
Phenotype differences. I'll say there's not a phenotype differences per se, because they can be as affected clinically, phenotypically, neuropsychologically as what we'll call a simple deletion.
We commonly report undergrowth with rings.
Right.
I mean, that's one feature that is often reported.
Of rings, ring chromosomes in general, typically.
Yeah.
are reported with undergrowth. I think the big difference is the risk for neurofibromatosis type 2 and the need to monitor appropriately for neurofibromatosis type 2. And there's certainly articles out there and chapters and books that will discuss the appropriate management and monitoring for someone who has a ring. And I'll let Katy explain, as the cytogeneticist, why that ring chromosome can lead to NF2.
Thanks, Curtis. So ring chromosomes form when the top of the chromosome and the bottom of the chromosome are deleted, and then the ends join to form a circle. That's why it's called a ring. And the ring is very unstable in cell division. So when the sister chromatids replicate and they're supposed to separate in mitosis, they get tangled up together. They can't separate like they're supposed to. So the ring can break or fragment and not go into the daughter cell. So instead of getting two identical daughter cells like you're supposed to, you can get a daughter cell that only has the normal 22 and not the ring. So you can get a daughter cell that's has monosomy 22, one copy of chromosome 22, right? And you have mitosis just in normal cell division. That's how you grow and function. Your cells have to divide because you're alive, right? So this is how you replace cells in all your tissues. So as your cells divide, if you lose a copy of chromosome 22, you can just by chance have a mutation in a gene on your other 22. It can happen all the time, right? So if you have a mutation in the NF2 gene, neurofibromatosis type 2, and it's in the nervous tissue, and it happens in the NF2 gene, then you can develop these benign tumors that lead to neurofibromatosis type 2. So you have to have two events in the same cell. You have to lose chromosome 22, and then you have a mutation on your retained copy of chromosome 22 in the right type of tissue and develop neurofibromatosis type 2. So individuals with ring chromosome 22 are at risk of having these two hits and developing neurofibromatosis type 2. Whereas a person with a simple deletion doesn't have this risk because they don't have the ring chromosome and they don't have the instability. But if you have a ring chromosome, you're at risk of NF2. So we advise anybody that's had a microarray study, you don't know whether you have a ring or not. All you know is you have a deletion of chromosome 22, but you haven't looked at the chromosomes to see whether you have a simple deletion where just the bottom is missing or whether you have a ring. So if your child has only had a microarray, you don't know what the chromosome looks like. You have to have a karyotype to know whether you have a ring or not. Now, if you know your child has a ring, then your child needs to be monitored for NF2. And you can email me or email Curtis, and you can call us and we can send you an article to give your doctor to why this happens. You don't want them to sequence the NF2 gene. You don't want them to just say, oh no, your child doesn't have skin lesions. You want them to do MRIs, to do hearing and vision and all these other testing to monitor them periodically after about the age 10 and on for features of NF2. And we'll send you literature on that. And I'm trying to scare you because I want you to take care of your child and make sure they don't have any of these features. Do you want to add something, Curtis?
No, I think we have to remember, Nick brought up the term mosaic, and tumors in and of, and Katy works at a cancer center now, but tumors in and of themselves are mosaic in the sense that you may not have that change apparent in your blood. That second hit may only be and will likely only be found in the tumor itself. And the other thing to remember is that NF2 gene is not a change in or loss of that gene is not due to the size of the deletion, because the NF2 is much more proximal, very far removed from where the deletion would be at the bottom of the 22. So it's forming this ring that leads to the loss of that one copy of 22, not the deletion itself.
Right. So the doctor can't say, oh, the NF2 gene is not deleted. You're not at risk. We know NF2 is not deleted. If you had a ring with NF2 deleted, that would be not viable. It's too big of a deletion. That's like the whole chromosome. So we know that's not the case. We're just saying the ring is unstable. That's what your risk is, that the ring is unstable. And I'm sorry I'm being so adamant about this, but I get mad when they tell you stupid stuff.
It's because some doctors are not familiar, and they give them the wrong information, and so they
Right.
need to know to check.
Right.
Listen, I think that's what we all love about you guys is your passion, right? And it's your passion for this community and for the science and all of that. So I'm going to ask one more question, and hopefully you'll have an answer. But this is light. If you had to pick a Friends character, who would you be? Out of the 6. Nick. Don't say Monica.
Denise
Well,
for Monica.
I can't answer that question because I'm probably one of a super small percentage, kind of like our kids, right, of Americans who didn't like that show and never watched it. So I cannot pick who.
Well,
who
the
I
good news about that, Nick, is the whole thing is I'll be there for you because we're friends. So don't worry about it. We're still there for you regardless of whether you
Right.
choose a character or not.
Why don't you
I
pick a
like
character
Nick
for him
was
then?
not a big Friends person either. So I would say if I picked one, whoever not that I'm tall and thin, but the tall thin guy was kind of goofy to me. So that's who I would.
Ross.
Ross, yeah.
I was going to say Chandler.
Well, it could be Chandler. I don't know. Who got to date Jennifer? Who had the hots for Jennifer Aniston?
Ross.
Oh, is that what you're trying to say, Curtis?
I said I could definitely have the hots for Jennifer Aniston. So I mean,
I love it. I love it. How about you, Katie?
I don't know. Sue, who would I be?
Oh, I'll have to think about this, Kate.
I think I'm the bartender or the guy in the
No.
coffee maker.
Well, I think we're kind of a little bit of everyone, but like
I'm
not.
the cranky guy in the coffee shop, I think.
No.
I love that guy.
No.
I want to be him.
Maybe Chandler.
You're Joey.
Gosh.
I don't think so. But wait a minute, hold on. What about you, Denise and Ronnie? You've got the background here. We don't even have the background.
I'm
Ladies.
Phoebe because I'm not Rachel and someone else stole Monica.
Yeah, I had to take Monica. I was definitely called Monica. Not that I'm,
I hate to say that, but I would have said that about both of you. Phoebe, Monica. I'm just saying.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I got usurped from that role. It was the only way we could get Denise to co-host was if we called her for a day.
I love it. I love it. This was really, really fun. And, again, I know I'll let Ronnie have the closing words here, but just really appreciate the 4 of you and everything that you've done and that you continue to do. And being able to, give up some time this evening to be with us. And just really appreciate all 4 of you. Thank you.
Right. Thank
Ronnie,
you.
before you
I've seen you all.
Ronnie,
It's
before
our
you start,
pleasure. Like
can I
they
just
say at Chick-fil-A, my pleasure.
Can I just say one thing, Ronnie, before you close?
Sure.
That we all know it's been a tough few years for our community, and it still is, and ongoing, and it's such a emotional roller coaster for all of us. But if they ever listen to it, or if they're listening now, to all those families, we just love you, and they're still part of us. They'll always be part of us, and I hope they know that. So I just wanted to say that.
Amen.
Membership is permanent.
Yeah, that's right.
It was great having all 4 of you on the screen, being able to see all of you and to feel the feelings of how this started, because you all still carry that forward. Your compassion, your love, your knowledge, and your senses of humor, just a gift to all of us. So thank you all so much for this evening, and look forward to being in touch with all of you soon.
All right.
Thank
Our
you.
audience,
for having
Thank
us.
you,
there with
Denise.
us all.
Goodbye.
Good night,
Thank
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank
Good night.
Good night, all.